Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Hey, welcome to this episode of the Note Close Show. As always, Scott Carson, excited to be here with today. I'm really excited about this episode. And this episode comes from so many of my students reaching out to. Yes, we have so many people out there that are buying distressed debt, distressed notes. But we also get a lot of people that have rental portfolios, or they're looking to buy their first rental, or they've got stuff and they're tired of dealing with toilet stands and trash outs in some cases, or trying to be a one-man band managing it all. Now, there was an article that came out, I think last week, where it says there's 30 renters for every one house listed for sale right now in the market. And that doesn't tell you the opportunity and for rentals, and then combine that with 68 out of the top 105 markets. It's more affordable to rent in those markets than owning a home. That leads to a lot of opportunity for you. And with those of you out there that are targeting distressed assets for potential subject to deals or deals that you can take down, it may not be in the best interest for you just to turn around and flip that property, but to hold on to it for a while. So I wanted to reach out, and we found an amazing tool that you guys will want to hear about. A tool that is helping over 500,000 renters out there manage their rentals, find leases, find leads, and doing amazing stuff. And what if I could tell you, it's basically free in a lot of cases for you. So I'm excited to have the rock star, the lady that knows it all about this amazing product, this amazing service. She is the senior education content manager for a company called TurboTenant that you want to make a note about. It's the all-in-one landlord software solution. How am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about Krista Ruether joining us from Denver, Colorado this morning. What is going on, Krista? How you doing today?
Well, with such a warm introduction, how could I be doing anything less than spectacularly, Scott? Thank you so much.
No problem at all. I am available for weddings, bar mitzvahs, and divorce parties too, if you need. So
Perfect. I'm going to take your card after this. We can chat. We've got
there
some
we go.
divorce
That's
parties.
my side hustle, being the Bob Baffert of special events, basically out there. But anyway, so TurboTenant, we connected with one of your colleagues, Ava, before FinCon,
Mhm.
and we talked a little bit while I was there. And I was like, man, this is a great. We definitely need to have you guys on to talk about it, to share with our audience, because we've got 70,000 email database of investors that have a variety of different real estate deals, and rentals is a big chunk of them. So let's how'd you get to where you're at? And let's talk a little bit about kind of maybe the TurboTenant journey, origin story, if it was a Marvel universe, you know what I mean?
The origin story, the lore of how TurboTenant came to be. I will talk about TurboTenant first. I'm a little less interesting, so I'll save me for the end. TurboTenant was started by a fledgling rental property manager. His name is Sarnan. He's no longer a fledgling. He's a full-on leader in the space. But back in 2015, he was looking around. He's like, why is it so hard to find a good tenant? What do I do? What do I ask? I've got this amazing asset. I want to make the most of it. And he is one of those type of people who, when he looked around and saw this need, he said, okay, I can fill this. I can actually provide a service that's so good that nobody ever has to sit there and wonder how they're going to succeed at being a landlord again. So it all started with rental applications, and it's really blossomed from there. So we have everything that the DIY investor needs to manage their portfolio, from marketing your listing, screening tenants, having state-specific lease agreements that stay up to date with the latest legislation, messaging tenants, maintenance. I mean, you name it, we have it, because we were built by landlords for landlords. So it's been really a joy to watch how it's taken off. I've worked at TurboTenant now almost 3 years, which in the tech field is a long time. I'm basically a grandmother. So it's been really lovely to see how, we've evolved even in that short time frame. And I came to TurboTenant with a background in real estate agent education. So I used to work for a company where we would put together real estate agent education, make sure that people were certified correctly to go out and buy and sell houses. And I took that knowledge, and it's really transferred into an educational program here at TurboTenant that I run. I have a monthly webinar series. We deep dive on different topics live, which means people do have to suffer through my jokes on a regular basis. But I get to teach them a lot too, which is super rewarding. I also run our research arm, which has been very fun. I survey landlords and renters to see what's going on in the industry at large, put together reports, press releases, things like that, so that my audience can always stay up to date with the latest in the industry and find their success along the way.
Awesome. We're going to definitely want to get a link of that that we can share with everybody to those, because it's definitely important to stay abreast of the situation. I had a guy to literally just a couple days ago. He lives in Indiana. He's got a property in Chicago, Illinois. He's looking to rent it out, trying to do it all himself. And lo and
Mhm.
behold, a squatter moved into it right the day before he's showing it to a prospective tenant.
Okay.
Calls the cops and the guy has a fake lease. And the guy's got to pay him a bunch of money to get out of it. And he's like, "How do I do this? I'm in Indiana when I should be doing." I'm like, first of all, the biggest issue is you're trying to do it all yourself, right?
Mhm.
And that kind of leads me to the question I want to ask is, where do you see the biggest pain points for the landlords in today's market, in today's world?
There are three major pain points I'd say popping up regularly for landlords nationwide. One is education. And granted, you heard it in my title. I'm a little bit biased toward education, right? But I think with situations like that squatter, if you don't know what your rights are and how to circumvent that kind of situation, it doesn't matter if you live right down the street or 3 states over, you're going to struggle, and it's going to be a lot of frustration, emotion, could possibly be a lot of money. But if you know your rights and the laws, you can confidently step in and say, actually, I know exactly how to take care of this. I'm not going to let it weigh me down. I didn't make a bad choice here. I can just solve this by doing XYZ. For some free advice for your friend. Squatters have fewer rights than tenants. So if you have someone with a legitimate lease, you can use that to kind of leverage and scoop a squatter out of your property. But we can touch on that later too. I would say the second problem that I see people really running into when they are trying to build up their rental property portfolio or otherwise manage what they have is not having a tool that does everything. Because
Hmm.
if you have piecemeal systems that are really manual, you are never going to be able to scale meaningfully without costing your entire life, honestly. It can get so easy to get weighed down in the details if you are trying to say, okay, but I need to update this Excel spreadsheet and I also only screen tenants through this one app. And oh, I have this separate place and I need to make sure I'm marketing my listing by posting it on 50 different sites by myself. Don't do that. It's 2024, almost 2025. There are systems in place already that you can take advantage of. Some of them, like TurboTenant, are free. You can give it a whirl, see how much time you're saving, and then decide what you want to do with all of that new opportunity waiting for you so that, you're making the most of your life. And thirdly, I would say landlords and housing providers should really make sure that they are considering their tenants to be business partners in this exchange versus someone adversarial or someone that's just a dollar sign. If you can view your tenant as a business partner, that sets you up to have really meaningful conversations and to build a good professional relationship where you can rely on them. They know the expectations, they're treating your property well, and you can stress less while still pulling in that stream of income.
Now, where do you see the biggest issues, not just in the pain points, but are we talking like, and you may not know this, but I imagine you probably do have a bit of a clue on the different, we've been seeing a lot of multifamily apartments going the route of foreclosure,
Mhm.
where people bought multifamily deals 2, 3, 4 years ago, even some last year, and they're losing foreclosure because they're not managing properly, or obviously interest rates have changed on the debt service of that stuff there. Do you guys work better where it's single family, or you'd also really can utilize TurboTenant on the multifamily space, saying more than 5, 6 units and beyond?
Absolutely. So you can totally bring in your multifamily portfolio. We make it really simple. You can divide up one property into individual units and market each one individually.
Nice.
Makes it pretty simple and streamlined. I will say one of the areas that keeps popping up as an issue in that space is people getting really excited, eyes the size of dinner plates, and they're saying, oh, there's a 50-unit property right down the street. I can buy it. I've never done this before, but why not jump in with both feet? And while that approach works for some people, it can be really easy to get overwhelmed and to say, holy crap, I have 49 units that are empty. I'm losing money on this. What do I do? So I always advise to start smaller, make sure that
Mhm.
you build out your processes, you know exactly how to run your business, and then amplify. There's not there's no shame in mastering your craft before you jump into something that large, or even just gaining some experience, making your network, finding shows like this one where you can get really good information before you are facing a huge property with no one in it and trying to decide what to do to move forward.
So let me ask you a question on that. I'd be willing to bet that TurboTenant would also work for maybe self-storage units too, besides just multifamily. Would that be a guess?
Yeah, you can get creative with it. We were very much built with residential real estate in mind. But stuff like our robust messaging feature, keeping track of your documents, so we have document storage, expense tracking. You can download our mobile app and take pictures of your receipts and have them all in one space. Investors can use that across the board. They can use it for commercial properties, they can use it for self-storage. There are some folks who uh they rent out spaces like in their house, like for storage in their house, or they have a parking space that they're renting out for folks. We've seen some unconventional usages of the platform, but get creative. Go see what you can do. It is free to sign up. Landlords can benefit from the vast majority of our suite of features without paying for anything. For example, tenant screening, that is charged to the tenant, although the landlord can opt to pay it. If you want a state specific lease agreement, you can buy them ad hoc, or you can get a premium membership and have unlimited state specific lease agreements. But other than that, there are very few features that a free member could not access and love.
What's the premium cost for folks?
Yeah, so it is one annual cost, no matter how many doors you have, it's at 149. So regardless of the number
Whoa,
of
I
doors,
didn't. Honestly, $149 a year, a
a
month.
year, a
What?
year. And you get unlimited state specific lease agreements, unlimited lease addendums. We also have a rich forms pack, which has all sorts of information you can glean and make your own. So things like lease violation notices, or if you have questions about your move in, move out checklist, we have both a static image or like a static page in our forms pack, and we have free condition reports for everybody. You also get paid out faster if you're a premium member. You have access to phone support with our Colorado-based team. I mean, I could go on and on. There's so many different things that you benefit from if you want to pay. But if you don't, if you just want to try it, please, it's free. Sign up, turbotenant.com. We have everything that you need.
Can't be doing something wrong if you got over 500,000 users already on that stuff there.
Yeah, right. And I'm really proud to say we actually have scaled up. We're at 700,000 users at this point. So it's really just
Wow.
been booming, and we love to see it. Millions of renters are on our platform. So the growth has been really excellent to witness.
Now, what's the one thing that you guys haven't replaced? The actual maybe dropping the keys off, or
Mm.
things that people would still need to have, whether they're renting down the street or maybe renting across the country.
Yeah, I would say we're always in talks with new partners to see how much of this we can streamline and empower remote landlords specifically. Um, so we don't currently have a system where someone's dropping off the keys for you, and we haven't partnered with like an automatic lock company. But keep your eyes peeled, because we're always having conversations saying, hey, who can we bring in that's going to provide the most value to our landlords and our renters?
Now, with the lead aspect of that, that's also if you're doing a lot of automated, does that end up saving folks quite a bit on maybe commissions they'd be paying to realtors otherwise to try to market? Do you see any of that or any kickback on that?
Yeah, so we do not get a kickback,
No,
but
I'm sorry,
have,
wrong
oh,
word there, but yeah,
that's
sorry.
okay. No, I really appreciate. I couldn't have planned a better segue, because Scott, one of my favorite stories is I was on a podcast with a gentleman who uses our service, and I didn't know he was a user of our service, so I'm giving my typical spiel. I'm doing it
Yeah.
up. Um, and he says, "Well, Krista, did you know I'm a TurboTenant premium user?" And I said, "Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Tell me more." He said, "Well, I found you guys because I had hired a real estate agent in Atlanta. He doesn't live in Atlanta, but he had hired one to try and find him a tenant." And she said, "All right, it's going to cost you first month's rent and this other fee. It's going to, but I'll find you someone." And he said, "Oh, there's got to be another way." So he started looking online. He started poking around and he found us. And he said, "You know what, real estate agent, I will make you a deal. Um, I am going to do my own search for a tenant. I'm going to go out there and see. If I beat you, if I find the person first, you waive that fee. If you beat me, I'll pay it." And for the last 6 years, every time he has a vacancy, he wins. So he has never once paid a
Wow.
placement fee because he uses our software. And our landlords average 28 leads per listing. So there's a wealth to choose from, and he's really taken advantage of that, which has been wonderful.
28 leads per listing. That falls right in line. We talked about 30 renters per every property for sale. But that
Yeah.
also gives you an abundance of being able to pick a better tenant versus what happens. A lot of folks is they get desperate or they take the first thing that pops in because they're afraid they're not going to see any leads from just sticking the sign in the yard or in Craigslist, you know.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly it. So no, we've tried to streamline the process as much as possible. You build one listing. We even have an AI generated listing description, which we trained on our fair housing course to try and make it as compliant as possible, give you everything you need. If you're not feeling creative that day, you click a button, it's going to generate an eye-catching title and description so you can just get it out there into the world. We also have a free pre-screener. So, let's say that a potential tenant is bopping around on apartments.com or somewhere else. They find your listing and they're like, okay, this seems great. This seems wonderful. I'm going to indicate that I'm interested. Well, then they get asked the pre-screener questionnaire. It has industry standard questions about move-in date, income levels, if they smoke, things of this nature. They can fill it out. You get to see that information. And from a glance, you can say, oh, they want to move in January, but this unit's going to be available the first week of December. I'm not going to move forward with them. So you've just saved yourself time and ultimately saved them time. And you can focus on the people who align with your criteria and get them to send in an application, which they pay for. And you're left with a wealth of choices so that you find the best person for your unique situation.
Wow, that's really good. Now you mentioned like something bopping around apartments.com. When you guys when a landlord uploads a property or is looking for it, where all does the listings go to attract these 28 leads per rental?
Yeah, so I'm really proud of this. They get syndicated out to dozens of the top rental property sites. So things like rent.com, apartments.com, gosh, there are so many. I can picture the animation we have in my mind with all the names. Uh, we also have a pretty unique plugin, so you can just post it right over to Facebook Marketplace as well. So trying to get you outside of the realm of where you might expect to open up the doors so you can have as many leads as possible. We also flag each lead with where they came from, so you can start to suss out, oh, in this area, rent.com really pulls in the most leads. Okay, that's really good to know. I can start to hone my listing if I want to, trying to make it as data focused as possible so that you can make the right decision.
So while you were answering that, I did jump on over here. Let me share the website because I love your
Yeah,
website. There's so much stuff on there.
so
And
much.
so there is. So there we go. I pulled up,
Thank
unlimited
you.
listings, posted to dozens of popular, and you've got rent, apartment list, rental source, Redfin, Dwellsy,
Yes.
apartments.com, homes.com. I mean, those are the big ones, right?
Those are the big ones. And thank you. This was unplanned, but I really appreciate you saving my biscuits. I would have been so sad to have missed like Redfin.
uh, but that's the great thing here. I mean, you guys have online apps and screening, lease agreements, rent payments. You have the mobile app. Um,
Yeah.
how effective do you see the tenants using this side of the business, or is what landlords are sending out pretty well, or do you still have a lot of hit and miss with people that aren't technologically savvy, or does that vary on where they're living and where they're renting?
It does vary to a degree, especially with people's ages, where they're located. But for the most part, you can ignore that. Our testers are doing different things. For the most part, it's been a pretty easy adoption process because we really wanted to make both the landlord and tenant portals feel like second nature. You're not going to
Hmm.
get in there and wonder what something is. It's very intuitive. And we have a rich support system, both with our actual workers who, like I said, they're based up in Fort Collins. They're great. I can vouch for them, but we also have so many support center articles and videos. So if you're someone who doesn't want to chat with people, but you still need your problem solved, you can do it. If you'd like to chat with them, and I highly recommend it because they're very fun people, you can reach out any time of the day, 7 days a week. We have someone there ready to help you.
That's really nice and convenient. Now, what about when we have those improbable issues like a pipe breaking when it gets snowy outside, or
Yeah.
um, issue with electrical or something like that? How does TurboTenant interact in with vendors to help your landlords fix these issues, especially when they're not there locally?
So there are a couple different methods that someone could use. Uh, First one, just the free method. It's really easy for your tenants to go in and put together a maintenance request. They can attach videos, they can take pictures. It's all on one request. They can detail the issue, when it started, etc., give you notes. Then you can either forward that on to your favorite contractor, or we also have what we call multi-user access. I know, sexy name. But really, it just means that someone else can log in and they can see that request and start taking action on it accordingly. In addition, we partner with a company called Lula. Lula is really aiming to make it so that maintenance is a stress of the past for landlords.
There you go.
Inherently, what they do is if you subscribe to Lula, they have a monthly, or excuse me, one-time membership fee each year, and then there's a on-site fee for when they go out to a job. But if you are enrolled in this program, your tenant can write in, they can say, hey, the pipe burst, I need some help. What Lula's going to do is first try to troubleshoot. They're going to say, okay, tell me more about the situation. Can you take a picture? Can you send me a video? If it's something like a pipe burst, that's pretty clear. You need direct action. But if it's something like a fuse has blown, they will walk your tenant through how to check the fuse box, what to do if they have a replacement fuse, how to install it, and try to avoid going out there and charging you that site fee. If they can't avoid it, they will coordinate directly with your tenant. They will come out at a time that works for that tenant, diagnose the issue, make the repair, take pictures, upload them so that you as the landlord can log in and see everything that's gone on. The other nice thing about Lula is that they have a set minimum where if anything is under that price, they will not bother you about it, right? You could say, okay, I don't really need to hear about any repairs under $300. It's none of my business. And they will work it out. You'll see it afterward. You'll get to see all of the status updates, the notes, the resolution. And if it's more than that amount, they will reach out and say, all right, here's what's going on. A pipe burst. It did these things. How do we want to move forward? And you can say, okay, I want you to bring out your pros. They're going to go ahead and take care of this. Let me know when it's done. And bing, bang, you're done. That's pretty simple.
Very nice. I see more and more landlords putting in their lease agreements like the first $500 of repairs or 250 repairs is relied on by the actual tenant in just general wear and tear in a lot of cases out there, which can
Yeah.
make it easy because a lot of tenants are not handyman or handy women.
No. 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 And knowing that there's that kind of clause in play makes it so the people who think they're really handy might take a step back and reevaluate and say, okay, should I try and do this myself and risk damaging things further, or should I just bite the bullet and bring in someone and take care of this, right?
Now, do you know if there's any markets out there where you guys see more issues? Any cities that are more difficult to be a landlord in by any chance or no?
When you ask that, it makes me think of legislation. So there are definitely cities that are more, we'll say, tenant friendly. I think there's a lot we could unpack with the dichotomy between tenant friendliness and landlord friendliness, but I don't want to take up your whole day, Scott. I certainly don't. But what I'll say for now is that yes, there are certainly cities and states that have more protections in place for tenants, and that can mean that landlords really need to know what their rights are and how to run a successful business accordingly. So, for example, Cook County in Chicago, it's
Crook. It's Crook County. Get it right. Crook County.
it's it has some pretty interesting pieces of legislation.
That's
Some
saying it very nicely,
rules.
girl. That's saying it very nicely.
Yeah, that's what they call me. Nice, Krista. And of course, LA County, California, New York City. There are places where you just need to be very well versed in not only the current legislative landscape, but also historic precedents so that you could say, okay, I know that if I invest here, I need to make sure that I understand the rules about rent capping, about how much and how often I can increase rent. What does that look like? Because if you don't, if you just jump in with both feet but no research, you will end up regretting it, frankly.
Yeah, when we were at FinCon, we were talking some folks out of Northern St. California that were landlords. They wanted to be landlords, but they wanted to be ethical landlords. They didn't want to have to evict anybody. Well, they went and bought in Portland, Oregon, which is one of the most worst markets to be renting in right now because you would basically have to pay people to get the heck out of Dodge if they're and They were like, well, we wanted to do something ethical. I'm like, listen, do you run a charity? No, we donate to one. Well, when you come across with that mindset, you are their charity in a
Hmm.
lot of cases. Are you here to make money? Or are you here to just give away free housing? Well, we'd like to. I was like, well, no, no, no. It's a pretty black and white answer on that. If you want to just give away money, go donate. Don't be a landlord. If you want to make money in landlord, you got to understand that there are some good and bad areas out there, places that you want to target and things you want to avoid. And that was one of the things.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I applaud the drive. I think everyone should aim for an ethical business, right? I would feel really bad and sick to my stomach if I was like, don't do it. And I don't, obviously that's not what you're saying either.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it is a business. So you have to evaluate, how can I move through this? What kind of processes can I put into place to make sure that I'm protecting my investment? Because
Hmm.
it's not cheap. It's not, just a throwaway 25 bucks, 50 bucks you're giving your kid money to go to the movies. No, it's like a chunk of change. And the implications and the legislative hubbub that you can get into if you do it improperly, or if you don't know the laws, or if you don't have a good solid lease agreement that details exactly what to do and what will happen, consequences for specific actions. It just gets messy. That's why people really need to continue to educate
Yeah.
themselves. I think that's so critical. Because otherwise, you could know the law for 2024, and then 2025 rolls around, there's a new law, you don't know it. There's no judge in the country who's going to hear you say, "Oh, I just didn't know." And
Right.
that's fine. That's fine, Larry the landlord. We're actually going to let you go on this one. Best of luck. Just don't you do it again. Like, no, that's not what's going to happen, and it can be very costly.
Yeah, definitely so. That's so true. If you don't know what's going on or you think it's the same in your city as it is in other places, that's not the case, ladies and gentlemen. So that's the thing. And you guys mentioned that you have a lot of different education on the different markets and things like that on TurboTenant. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you help your clients come up with like rental comps or what other units are going for in the area and stuff like that so they have an idea of comparative value, comparative rents that they can offer?
Absolutely. So we have our rent estimate report. It's free. You plug in the address of your rental and it'll pull up a gauge. So it'll show you at the 25th percentile, this is what people are charging. Here's where your property is likely to fall. Here's the 75th percentile, so that you could start to evaluate what you should be charging. And that's just one of our many free calculators. We also have things that will help you identify if your deal is actually going to be profitable. You can plug in and see, okay, what is the expected ROI if I purchase this property? Or how fast can I pay off this mortgage? What kind of payments would I have to make? What's my like financial independence number? What's my fire number? You can do all of that. We have a full suite of calculators, and we're always building more because people really need this information to make informed decisions, and we want to help with that.
I love that. Now I have to ask another question. I may have set you up for the second question with the first one there for you,
Let's go.
and I think I already know the answer to it. Because I was a little appalled when was it the House of Representatives or the Senate was enacting what they call it price fixing for large landlords. Have you seen any of this stuff out there? Like, oh, you used TurboTenant, you used Yardi, you used Rentometer or something like that to fix the rents and have a monopoly on things in an area there. And I was like, that's just how it works. How else are you going to compare rents in a market out there?
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that and what that the government needs to keep their big sticking nose out of the business?
Um, I appreciate you bringing that up because I think there's a misconception. So really that discussion was aimed at industrial landlords. So huge complexes
Yeah,
who were getting together and using RealPage to price match each other and form a monopoly. But that doesn't impact smaller landlords, people who are, we call them mom and pop landlords. That they are not playing on the same field. So what they were doing was price fixing. What they were doing is using this information, using this algorithm, and keeping notes with each other to try and make it really challenging for the renters in that area. Or I should say, on the flip side, to try and amplify their profits as much as possible without concern for their business partner, the tenants. But independent landlords, even if you have a portfolio of 300 units, you are still allowed to use things like TurboTenant's rent property calculator. That's not the same thing as forming a monopoly. Now, if you got all of your local landlords together and you said, all right, guys, we're going to set this price and we're just going to keep inching it up, at that point, you'd probably run afoul of some legislators. But no, on an individual basis or even in a small group, comparing what you're doing is allowed. It's when you take that next step, as these big corporations did, said, all right, we're fixing the price here and we're all going to charge this much in whatever area it was. But I appreciate you highlighting that, because there is a lot of, just landlords who are saying, well, what do you mean? Like, I want to make sure that my business
Right.
are being met. Why can't I see this? And you can. RealPage is gonna, I don't think their lawsuits have resolved. I think they're in a couple, along with the National Association of Realtors still might be in a couple. But that is not going to impact the individual landlord as much as it will institutional investors.
Totally agree with that. Now, let me ask you a question. With all the short-term rental markets taking place and landlords looking to maybe mix their portfolio up with long-term, mid-term, or short-term, like day in or week rentals, how does TurboTenant help with that? Is it good for Airbnb landlords as well, or is it more of a traditional 1 year, 6 month, or 30-day rental aspect?
Yeah, so I would say if you're a short-term landlord, you can certainly use most of our product without issue, right? Like, our lease agreements are very much structured for a little bit longer. So if you're midterm, you can use it too. You can use our leases. We have a space where you can add customization to it as needed. And I would highly recommend that, just in case, you furnished your midterm rental, you want to have a specific note on expectations there. The listing sites that we push to are largely for longer term. So
Right.
again, midterm rentals, you could still find success. I would say make sure that you specify in your listing description what kind of lease term you are seeking, so that you don't waste anyone's time, no one wastes your time, everything is all gravy. And everyone can pretty much benefit from everything, from the tenant screening side throughout someone actually living in the vacancy, taking residency, and eventually moving out. It's just some of those earlier pieces where you want to make sure that you're advertising in the proper way so you
Yep.
get people who are aligned with what you're actually looking for.
Makes a lot of sense out there for sure. Um, what what other things am I not asking here? Anything that you come across on a week in, week out basis, or hearing from some of your clients about different things or issues you guys have things you've implemented to help fix issues that people are facing?
I love that question. I would say something I'm really proud of is that we have built out an AI lease audit, so that if you have, let's say, so many folks have had leases that their original real estate agent gave them 20 years ago and they've just never checked. They're like, it's good enough, I'm using it. And as we've discussed at length throughout this episode, that's not typically going to cut it. So we built out an audit generator inherently, where you can drop in your existing lease agreement. It's going to take a look at it. It's going to compare it to the expectations that are current for your specific area. And it's going to point out either areas of opportunity, or it's like, hey, this clause is probably out of date. Or it's going to say, hey, you're missing this required disclosure. You should do something about it. And that is free as well. You can just check out what your current lease is doing, how it's serving you, where you might need to make changes. And let me tell you, it's way better to get a little slap on the hand from a piece of AI saying, "Ooh, this doesn't look great," versus, I don't know, going to court and having to pay buku dollars to try and rectify a mistake that you could have caught for free.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. 149 for a year, that alone is worth having this, instead of paying an attorney $250 an hour to update your lease agreements and things like that. And
Yeah.
the great thing is you guys are leveraging all this other stuff that you guys have done to help make it pass those savings on to your clients and customers out there, which is amazing out there.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. Where do you see, and I know you don't have a crystal ball,
Oh,
uh,
I do.
maybe you do, but where do you see things taking place in the next year? Are we going to see, you think, more affordability? Are you guys seeing more houses? I mean, obviously we've seen some market, like I'll give you an example, like San Antonio has been really overbuilt with multifamily stuff, and it's caused rents to go down and landlords to suffer a little bit because all these newer, flashier places in a lot of cases. But what's your outlook? I know that's one market, but what's your outlook for 2025? Look for you guys there at TurboTenant.
So looking out at the rental landscape nationwide, I think we're going to run into some pretty interesting challenges, particularly with the fact that we don't have enough housing units. I mean,
Mhm.
last time I checked, I believe we're down 3.5 million housing units in the United States. And if, depending on how certain policies shake out, we could see a dramatic reduction in the construction force. If we see a dramatic reduction in the construction force, then we can't build more the housing that we need. And we're especially seeing that shortage in terms of uh, affordable housing, by which I mean not like a set program by HUD, just things that are not luxury housing, right? There's this middle market that's been kind of ignored for a hot minute. And so I think we're going to see perhaps greater competition for vacant units. Um, in some areas, I think in slower areas, you're going to see a rise in needing to offer comps and offer different incentives to try and get
Mhm.
people in the doors, because I imagine that there's going to be another kind of migration, not to the degree that we saw in 2020, um, but similar big movements that could radically shift how your individual market is doing. So I'd highly recommend that people continue to stay in the know, become a part of your local RIA, watch shows like this one with Scott. Tune into TurboTenant as well. I do a lot over there, I'm just gonna say. But that way you will know as these shifts are happening, and you have a network of people who have been in the game for a while to help lead you through, especially if you're newer. But even if you've been here for a while, you're seasoned. Having community during this time and moving forward is going to be really impactful. So that would be my recommendation. I think things are going to shift quite a bit, and we'll have to see exactly how that shakes out.
Yeah, I expect us to probably see a little bit more in the tiny home markets out there in different parts of the country, just
Mhm.
because we need the affordability. And a lot of, I think the new generation of folks really aren't big about owning things. They're more about maybe travel experiences and things like that, necessarily not the, buying a home with a white picket fence to start things off. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I bet you're right. And I would also tag on there. I'll be interested to see how ADUs perform.
Yep.
Colorado.
For those that don't know, ADUs, additional dwelling units, that's where places in the country where you've got enough room in the backyard to put a different building that you can turn into a unit, which can generate rental income, or add another unit. Obviously, can make your house that much more marketable, more valuable, because you add equity or add square footage to it. So yeah, definitely you see a big play in that taking place, especially like in California, a lot of too.
Yeah, yeah. We just passed a law within the last year and some change, I believe, in Colorado. So I haven't seen anything measured out yet, the data from how that's been performing, but I would bet my bottom dollar that we see more of those conversations happening in different rental markets as we try and explore how do we add more housing with the current levels of density, with the current zoning laws. There's also been some talks about freeing up some federal land to build out housing upon. We'll have to see how that shakes out. Um, lots of stuff in the mix. Many interesting areas to try and focus on at once, I'd say.
Yeah, exactly. And the biggest thing that we do, the thing I can tell folks is learn how to automate and delegate so much of your duties, ladies and gentlemen. If you're trying to do it all, you're not going to grow nearly as fast as you want. That's why we have Krista and TurboTenant on here to share this amazing resource for you. I meant to ask this question too. Do you guys allow the electronic online aspect of being able to collect deposits and collect rents on a monthly basis for folks, so it's all automated that way a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. So we rent is one of the biggest concerns, obviously, for different housing providers. We make it so simple. You can input your late fee policy. We'll actually go track it down for you. We have automated rent reminders that let your tenant know, hey, 5 days from now, rent is due. They can also set up auto pay so it just comes out of their account. They don't have to think about it. That's probably the best way for it to be done, in my humble but correct opinion. And of course, those auto late fees are pretty clutch as well, because as you mentioned, anything that you can automate, anything that you can just take off of your plate is going to free you up for whatever else you want to do, whether that's scaling your portfolio, spending more time with family, what have you. It's your time to spend, so don't spend it doing the small stuff that we can do for you.
Yeah, it's also easier too. That can be a profit margin for some folks. Something you should identify, but it also makes it really easy when it's automated versus listening to somebody. Well, I dropped off rent at 5:05 at the office.
Right.
It was on
Yeah.
time. Well, Come on now.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. And you'd be
Uh-huh.
surprised at the number of people who are still paying in cash and check. We covered a story over on our podcast about someone whose tenant came to them and said, "Well, I got a bunch of gold bars. Can I pay in gold?" Like, well, let's keep things simple. Let's keep it just consistent. Here's a tool that's going to do everything for you. We also send out rent receipts because in 18 states, those are required.
Mhm.
And it's just good tracking for your tenants' finances, things like that. So, again, another thing to get off your plate. We will handle the heavy lifting for you so that you can continue earning your revenue without having to stress out.
Now, let me ask you a question. Would it
Yeah.
be with us seeing, especially in the note space, we see some folks out there that go out and they buy property and then they finance it with either owner financing to an individual who's making monthly payments to them, or they use what's called like a contract for deed
Mhm.
or a rent to own or lease option and that stuff. Do you have some of those features on? I mean, it'd be pretty simple just structuring and setting up, I would imagine, in some cases with TurboTenant, huh?
We're always in talks about it. We haven't built some of those capabilities out yet. You could still make it happen in our platform, though,
Hmm.
especially with that multi-unit access, or excuse me, multi-user access. It makes it pretty simple. If you have questions about how to do it, reach out to our support team because they can help point you in the right direction and we can get creative with it.
Very nice. I like it. I like it a lot. Krista, we're gonna have you come back on here and we're gonna have to jump on the platform and dive into it start to finish because I think a lot of our folks would love that. And do a little bit deeper dive on this. But this has been really, really valuable. I think you've answered a lot of questions, given folks. Obviously, we're pointing them in the right direction to TurboTenant to take advantage of some of that. That's not a special offer. That's their normal pricing, ladies and gentlemen. You know what I mean? 149 for a year on top of all the free stuff that they give along with that. I mean, you can't buy somebody. You cannot even hire a VA to help you with half that stuff. You just got to log in there and start implementing it, most of it in, and moving your existing tenants and your existing paperwork systems, leases, and stuff online there in one spot that's accessible from a smartphone, right?
A smartphone. Landlord from anywhere.
Landlord from anywhere. I like that. I like that. Awesome, awesome stuff. Krista, thank you so much. What's the best way for folks to tap in? Just going to over to turbotenant.com. We can put the link in below in the description there, or how is it best for folks to connect with you to check out what you guys got going on?
Yeah, come on over to turbotenant.com, set up a free account, poke around. If you want to find me specifically, you certainly can. Turbotenant.com and go over to the education tab in our product. There are so many different resources that we've created for you, and many of them have my face. So I am slightly inescapable, but I hope you will have fun anyway and learn quite a bit.
Well, awesome. We look forward to that continued education, and thank you so much. And we look forward to having you on again.
Oh,
Uh,
I can't wait. Thank you for having me. This was wonderful.
awesome. Thank you, Krista. All right, guys and gals, you heard it here. Go on over there, check it out. Start test driving if you've got some rentals. Hey, put it to work. The more you can simplify and automate and put a little AI on your shoulder there to help you out with things, the less headaches you'll have. We all know there's always going to be some things here and there, but the more you can delegate, the more you can kind of streamline that process and educate your clients, the better the renters will be and the better the landlord that you be. So go out, take some action, everybody, and we'll see you at the top. Bye. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Hey, welcome to this episode of the Note Closure Show. As always, Scott Karst, excited to be here with you today. Really excited about this guest. Now, this guest is a part two of the previous episode you just listened to. We obviously, if you hadn't listened to part one, go back and listen to part one. We had Krista Ruether from TurboTenant on here, who just absolutely killed it. Great episode, great stuff. Our guest on part two here, he is the co-founder of REI Hub, which is also part of TurboTenant. And they're providing intuitive accounting software tailored for rental property owners and real estate investors. So that works for all of you guys listening to this, whether you're buying notes or have rental properties or fix and flip stuff like that. REI Hub enables landlords to be their own bookkeeper and get it right, which is important these days, especially as tax time is coming up more quickly and easily than ever before. REI Hub also partners with industry leaders providing property management software. Companies like TurboTenant provide investors with a comprehensive and easy solution to all their rental property. And so we're honored to have the man, the myth, Mr. Adam Hamilton join us today. What's going on, Adam? How you doing today, bud?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for that wonderful introduction, Scott. I appreciate it.
Hey, no problem, man. I'm available for birthdays and bar mitzvahs and weddings too, if you need me to ever to be
Oh
like your
man,
front
we need
man.
to get you on Cameo. Yeah, you've got to flow with that.
There you go, exactly. So let's talk a little bit about before we dive in and do a little bit of a walkthrough. Talk about kind of your journey and what's really led you to where you're at today with especially REI Hub.
Absolutely. So I have a little bit of a background in both small businesses and rental properties. And what that really led me to realize, especially going to investor meetups and talking to so many of the people in the industry, is how few people knew the score. How few people, when you say, hey, how are your businesses, how are your rentals performing? Like, what KPIs are you tracking? What intelligence have you gained from your bookkeeping in the last year? So few people had answers. And I feel like on the traditional small business side, startups and things along those lines, people understand and accept the value of bookkeeping and accounting. But in the rental world, there's a little bit less of a focus on it. It's a little bit more of a chore, a little bit more of a have to, rather than the opportunity that it really is to run a better business, gain more understanding of the business that you're running, and help yourself now and in the future at tax time, making sure that you are doing things right and paying as little taxes as you can legally. So
Do you think that comes from investors being, oh, I hate to say this, control freaks and trying to do it all themselves in a lot of cases? Jack of all
a little
trades?
bit, a little bit, it's an interesting industry we're in where we have these businesses with massive asset valuations, millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, all being run and all the financials being run by, guess what, a non-financial professional. What other industry, what other business do you encounter that in? I would say almost none, because it's a little bit about who becomes a real estate investor. And it's not just people who have financial experience. It's your average everyday professional who is looking to grow, expand, get ready for retirement, have a side hustle, do more with what they have. And what makes real estate so interesting and appealing is that there are so many different ways to get into it and so many different ways to succeed in it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that because you're great at finding a good deal, great at finding an off-market deal, great at finding a note, that you necessarily have that financial experience. So you kind of wind up in this situation where you've decided to become a real estate investor, you've decided to become a note investor, you've gotten into it, you've learned about it, you've started to be good at it, you found a tenant, you figured out how to collect rent using a great product like TurboTenant. And then 6 months down the line, you realize, wait a minute, I have to file taxes. Like I have to find out why there's no money in my bank account. And that's when they come and look for an accounting or a bookkeeping solution, and then realize just exactly how deep that well goes and how complex it can get.
What do you think the three biggest mistakes investors are doing that run into that issue? Like, oh shit, I gotta pay Uncle Sam his pound of flesh, and there's nothing in the kitty for it.
Well, I think that a lot of people, they don't start from a strong foundation. And just like anything else, if you don't know, if you don't have, your feet underneath you, it's going to be really hard to take a lot of good steps. So when you're starting off your investment journey, you might not realize the value of important steps like separating out your business and your personal finances. And guess what? If you've been running your rentals for 8 months and now you realize maybe those things should be separate, you're going to have a lot more work to do than if you just from day one realize, hey, I need a different bank account, right? Another thing people don't do is they don't start and then review. You know, a lot of times people will just kind of say, okay, well, I think this is the way supposed to do it. And I'll just enter these transactions and I'll just put this over here. But they don't take a moment and say, well, what kind of reports does that give me? What am I getting out of my bookkeeping? And how can I then realize too little too late that I needed to set things up or I needed to do things differently? And then that creates a lot of make work kind of at the most pressurized time of year as we're about to enter into tax season. And oftentimes investors don't stop to think and realize, hey, maybe there's a tool for this. maybe there's something that's built for people like me that can make some of these steps a little bit easier. Because if you're using a spreadsheet, if you're using a generic accounting software, you might not have the organizational framework that is going to help you make good decisions along the way without even realizing it.
Yeah, that totally makes a lot of sense, because a lot of investors get into they love the idea of, let's just use a term here, sausage, but they don't necessarily want to go into making it with all the ingredients properly. You know what I mean?
No.
We like the rehab side. We like, oh, let's get it fixed up and turn a turd into a diamond, and then put somebody in. We're getting 200 or $200 a month cash flow, or $300 a month cash flow. But how, they're used to that. It's a different hat putting on, instead of going from the fix and flipper or the landlord to that financial expert. And I think a lot of it goes with, so as you said, all these real estate clubs, all these investment clubs, all these conferences oftentimes focus on the origination of the deal, not the continuation of it, which is really an art, but not that difficult to find, right?
Well, it's a different skill set, and it's a different mindset. And to be frank, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like, if we weren't deal makers by nature, then it wouldn't be happening. And there always comes a point in every investor's journey where you have to decide, what is your unique advantage? What is it that makes you special, that's making your business work, that's keeping that money flowing into your pocket? And at some point, you might reach a level of sophistication, a level of complexity, where you realize that, hey, finding the deals is my unique ability, maybe not bookkeeping for them. But it takes a while to get to that point, because an outsourced bookkeeper is expensive. And you can be looking at bills easily in the hundreds of dollars per month or thousands of dollars per month, depending on the size of your portfolio. And that doesn't happen overnight. And so until you get to that point where you realize and you recognize, hey, I need to find out what I can do best and what somebody else can do best, before then, it's on you. And that means that you should be looking for opportunities to make things easier on yourself, to install systems that are going to benefit you in the short term and in the long run, and to find potentially members of your team or outsourced members of your team or companies that can help ease that journey as you are learning and growing and expanding your abilities in these different areas.
I love that. What do you think are some of the top overlooked, let's say, profit or cost savings benefit that you find that a lot of investors forget about or just don't know about when it comes to their books and upkeeping of their books and accounting stuff?
Great question. Great question. So, at REI Hub, we have a tax review process that we walk people through. It's just an available report to help make sure that you're not missing some of these easily things that are easy to miss. And that's the first thing that comes to my mind. And the things that we'd help you double check for there are, number one, have you entered in all of your transactions? Have you claimed all of your deductible expenses? It sounds really simple, right? Because that's not necessarily saying, oh, your maintenance expenses. But if you're using a personal account that also has your rental property in it, you're going to have 16,000 transactions, and not all of them are going to apply for your rentals. So what does that mean? It means it makes it really easy to miss opportunities for times you have spent money to manage or maintain your rental business, and therefore you are not claiming all the deductions that you can in order to reduce your taxable net income. Or if you're not using a software, even if you do have a rental specific account, maybe you're using spreadsheets and you're counting on yourself to manually enter in every expense. Well, again, that's not a system that is set up to help you. That's a system that's set up to allow for omissions, because you don't also have double checks, making sure that you are catching all those things. So number one is make sure you know all the transactions that apply to your rentals. Make sure you get them all in the system. That's structural. But then there are also some more specific things. We want to talk about an easily missed deduction opportunity. Mileage. Have you driven to manage or maintain your properties? Guess what? Every time you drive from property to property or from property to Lowe's and back, that's an opportunity for you to achieve a tax deduction. You just have to keep the records. You just have to make sure that you are tracking that so that you can take advantage of it. And it's really easy to say, you know what, it's only 65 cents a mile or 70 cents a mile, like no big deal. But the year is long, and over time, that adds up. Another opportunity that a lot of investors miss out on is, and you shouldn't be missing out on this one, but it's possible, is when you are keeping your books, when you are a real estate investor, you have a lot of loans, right? And loans are complex financial transactions because in a loan payment, in a mortgage payment, you actually have several things going on. You have a loan repayment, principal pay down, which is not tax deductible. That's just you paying back money you borrowed. The government doesn't let you take that back. You have interest, which absolutely is tax deductible, and then it's a key component of your profit and loss and your Schedule A to make sure you're entering in that in. But let's think about investors who have these escrowed mortgages, where the bank is responsible for taking your collecting money from you on a monthly basis to pay your taxes and insurance bills. But guess what? If that's coming out of your escrow account, that's not coming out of your bank account. Even if you have a rental specific bank account set up, you don't have a transaction saying, here's the $2,000 I paid in real estate taxes. That's coming across your mortgage servicer's account of your escrow, which is your money. And you might think, well, I'm entering in my mortgage payment every month. But that escrowed piece of your mortgage payment, the IRS does not allow you to deduct directly the escrow contribution from your mortgage payment, because that is your loan servicer's best guess at 1/12 of what they think needs to be in your escrow account to pay your insurance and tax bill. The IRS says that doesn't fly. You need to enter in the actual expense, the actual transaction where you paid your taxes, you paid your insurance, or your mortgage servicer did so on your behalf. So even these are real chunky expenses, right, Scott? I mean, this is thousands of dollars per year. And hopefully you're doing a good, smart review before you're entering your taxes at the end of the year, and you are taking and saying, wait a minute, why is there a zero in this insurance category? Why is there a zero in this tax category? So hopefully you're not missing it from that perspective. But all the same, a huge one that you need to make sure you are double checking, especially if you've got an escrowed mortgage. And then the last one that is really easy to miss out on is depreciation. And we know about depreciation because this pops up in every single article you're going to Google about tax tips for real estate investors. But it's still easy to miss because it's complicated. It's because it's a little bit more abstract. It requires a little bit more understanding of the tax code and accounting principles than a standard deductible expense. But it's something that is going to make a big difference in your numbers. And it is often the key differentiating factor between being cash flow positive in the real world and showing a loss on your taxes, which is one of the key things we're really optimizing for as real estate investors. So when it comes to depreciation, I don't want to get stuck in the weeds about that, but it's something we often tell our customers at REI Hub and TurboTenant that you don't have to track it if you're using a CPA or tax preparer, but somebody does. And before it goes on your taxes, before you sign your tax return, you need to make sure you've got entries in your taxes and your insurance and in your depreciation columns on that Schedule E per property.
Yeah, that's definitely important. On the note side, I would add into knowing if it's a short-term capital gain or a long-term capital gain in a lot of cases too adds a big impact. Especially we see that in the note business when people go to like modify or reinstate. It's a big difference when it comes to modifying the loan at 365 or 366 day versus 364. You know what I mean? It's a big difference. Absolutely. Taxes. And then one thing that's been pounding my head is too, having a good bookkeeping and keeping accounts separate is also a great asset protection strategy to avoid commingling of funds and piercing that corporate veil. So that you
100%.
You know, that's one of the most important things. People don't often think about that as the bottom line, but you know, a lawsuit is not cheap no matter what, even if you're innocent of anything. Being sued.
You know, and I'm guilty of thinking primarily through the financial lens, primarily through the tax lens, but that's not all that's going on. Right. There's liability, there's assets, there's a huge legal side of this where oftentimes your how you're handling your finances not only can, like you said, put you at risk of piercing a veil, but it can also sometimes help signal to the IRS what you're doing. And there are different things, you know, along the lines of, you know, active participation, passive participation. Are you sending 1099s? There are different things also that can impact how the IRS is perceiving your business, or that you can use as examples of, hey, I'm doing this, you should consider me in this fashion.
So true about that, because people will forget about it, and you've got to provide that, especially if you're bringing on investors and paying them, you know, monthly payments or quarterly payouts, or you've got in syndications and things like that. There's a lot of things that go along with that paperwork wise. If you're used to painting and replacing carpet, you're not the right person to be doing that for your business.
Absolutely. And a good CPA is often worth their weight in gold. I mean, the the things that they can think of that are not top of mind for you are large and impactful. And something that also should be done as early as possible if you're looking to grow and scale your business, because oftentimes how things are started has a big impact on how they finish and roll through at tax time. And from my side, from the TurboTenant and REI Hub side, we're not your CPA, but we are helping provide your CPA their ammunition. They can only work with what you give them. And so good, clean books that have all of your transactions, that have all of your revenues, have all of your expenses, have those capital expenditures and fixed assets considered as well, are what they work with. And so you need to give them what they need so that they can help you in the way that they know how.
Yeah, that's definitely important. I mean, CPA is an important person to have, thinking big term, big things, big deductions, maybe not in the line item things, but that's where REI Hub and stuff like that can help you kind of download that dump, put that stuff together so you give them what they need to either make an impact on your taxes or long-term wealth growth and strategies as well for you.
100%. They're not going to be looking back at your bank accounts unless you ask them and pay them a lot of money to. They're going to be looking at the reports that you give them, and that's their fodder. That's what they work with.
Let's talk about some of those out there that maybe been avoiding that, haven't filed tax the past couple of years. They may not have all their invoices, but they've got a credit card statement or bank account they can go back in. Is that as effective if they could get started, go for this year and then work their way backwards? Or what would you recommend to those out there that kind of been avoiding Uncle Sam?
Oh, that's a great question. And there's definitely going to be some, there's some tax advice involved in that question, Scott. So, consult with your tax preparer or your CPA.
There we go. There's a disclosure, everybody. There's the disclosure. Right?
There we go. Once you start doing it, you can't stop yourself. You're talking to a friend. You're like, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a CPA. Yeah. But number one, I'd say is make sure you don't keep going further in the hole. So if that means that you're a couple of years behind and you're staring down the barrel of this year's tax season, maybe the first thing you should do is file an extension for this year's taxes so that you're giving yourself time to go back and take care of the things that happened ahead of time and further in the past, right? I'd also say you need to do everything you can as soon as you can to get as many of your primary sources of your primary records as possible. Mm-hmm. We think about all of our bank records as kind of always being there, but these days banks are not always amazing about keeping your transaction by transaction records easily accessible for you for long time periods in the back. Or if they are, maybe they're in PDFs instead of in a spreadsheet. What you can do with a spreadsheet is you can work with it. You can manipulate it. You can upload it into REI Hub and be able to book all those transactions. On PDFs, you're going to have a lot of manual work, a lot of manual transactions to do. But when you're looking years in the past, you're still going to have to go, to as many of the primary source records as you have. Also because you need those things in case there's ever a potential for an audit. You need to be able to substantiate your record keeping, and take a look back there. Off the top of my head, those are the top two things I would look at.
No, it totally makes sense. Now, obviously, as we're in the new year now, people have a lot of those resolutions. Hey, I want to do better with my books. I want to do better with tracking things. I don't want to just piece it all together with a bunch of sticky notes on my wall here and try to put it together through TurboTax or something like that. That is not as easy. How difficult is it for folks to get started? What's the easiest way or what's the best way? Maybe walk us through kind of the process of starting to put their books in order and working with you guys.
Sure. We do our best to make it easy because we're providing an industry specific, a subject specific solution for you. And a lot of what many investors encounter when they're starting their bookkeeping is they're looking at a blank slate. They're looking at a blank spreadsheet that has nothing in it. And they're saying, how do I structure this? Even if I can put a transaction in there, what's supposed to happen with that transaction? Or they're looking at a generic piece of accounting software that was designed for a services business or the corner store or a restaurant. And they're saying, what the heck is a class? What is a job? How does this map to real estate? And that gets complicated. It's like, sure, accounting software is accounting software, but if it's not called what you expect, how do you expect to use it without any background knowledge?
Where's the dictionary that outlines what I'm calling one thing for another thing, right? Or the glossary terms?
Where is my accounting to real estate glossary? I need that. And really, that's what REI Hub was built for, is we set out to make it as close to the language of real estate as we possibly can. And so when you get started in our system, you start off by defining your properties. You call it a property. You can have a picture of it. You can have units. You can have groups of properties. So we're trying to mirror what's happening in the real world. And then we're giving you the opportunity to connect your bank accounts to be able to get that flow of transaction data from your bank into your accounting software so that you can then build your books, because the individual transactions, the expense, the 75 bucks at Lowe's and the $1,000 deposited in your bank account, those are the building blocks of your financial records. It's the individual transactions that happen. But then once you have them, you need to be able to do something with them, right? And so what REI Hub has done is we have built transaction types in the language of real estate so that if you can tell us what this was it an expense? Was it a loan payment? Was it a credit card payment? We can then narrow down the options that you see on that next screen so that you can get it right without having to know quite as much. If you tell us it's an expense, we're going to ask you, okay, what property was it and what expense account does it apply to? And we start you off with expense accounts that exactly match the IRS Schedule E so that we've got the shortest possible distance between keeping your books and filing your taxes. Now, of course, we allow you to expand that chart of accounts as necessary, because that's where you get the opportunity to learn from your books, to gain additional business intelligence, is when you add granularity so that you can see where you're spending that money and how you're spending that money and who you're spending that money with, so that you can make more intelligent decisions about your business based on what has already happened. But at the same time, we don't want to overwhelm you, because that's counterproductive. We want to start you off simple and let you, based on the situations and the complexities and the nuances of your particular real estate business, define what that additional granularity, what that additional level of detail should be. And then we're going to give you further features that are going to make some of the more complicated things a little bit easier. One thing that's unique about REI Hub is we provide the ability for dynamic loan amortization. Now, what does that mean? That was kind of a weird sentence. It means, again, like I said earlier, your loan payment, which is a fundamental part of real estate bookkeeping, is not a simple expense. It's not a simple loan repayment. It's got a lot of different pieces in it. So if you give us some basic information about that loan, we can help break it down into those component, principal, interest, and escrow parts for you on an automatic and ongoing basis, which means that your books are more accurate on a month-to-month basis. And at the end of the year, you're going to have less work to do. And we're one of the only systems that I'm aware of that is going to help provide native fixed asset or capital expenditure tracking. So all you people who are value add rentals, fix and flips, people who are not just keeping their properties operating, but are continuing to invest in them and improve them. Well, guess what? You can't just deduct all those expenses in the year in which they occur. You need to capitalize them. You need to depreciate them. And because this is such a larger part of real estate investors' financial lives than it is, again, of a CPA's business, of a restaurant's business, just like the financing part is, we've invested to make this as easy as possible. Again, it's a little complicated, but we're doing what we can to help walk you down that path and get you into the right spot. And then on top of that, we have a support team who actually knows something about real estate bookkeeping. We're not your CPAs, but there's very few people you can call and say, do you think this is an expense or a capital expenditure or a fixed asset purchase? Or how do you think I should categorize that? There are very few people you can call that are going to pick up the phone, know what you're talking about, and help get you to an answer without having to pay $300 an hour to talk to your CPA.
Right. That's the big key right there. Yeah.
And with those things, I mean, you're well on your way. So get started, set up your properties, link your bank accounts, start booking transactions, reach out when you got questions, and we're going to help get you on that pathway towards, if not going back 5 years, at least making sure that on the way forward, you're doing things a little bit more repeatably with a systematic and organizational focus, and giving you the confidence to know that you are doing the right thing for your business. Well, it's a little bit like working out.
Yeah, totally. But you can see the results versus, what are my numbers actually telling me? Where am I spending my money? My cost per leads? Where am I getting the most bang for my buck when it comes to a variety of things versus just looking at, okay, what are my bills and what do I have in my checking account?
That's right.
That's what a lot of people do. There was a oh, what was I watching the other night? They were like, oh, it was like Landman was on talking about, oh, my daddy always told me either A, you got to learn how to balance a checkbook and be good at that, or make enough money that you don't have to balance a checkbook.
Amen to that. Yeah. Of course, the more
Uh,
money you have, the more money you have to misplace.
exactly.
But there
More
is a little bit
write-offs,
of truth.
more line items, more businesses, more cash flow to keep track of for you.
Yep, yep. And we're often guilty of uh, being deal makers, being entrepreneurs, being people who are trying to find I don't want to say the gaps, but find the opportunities. Um, that that means that sometimes we're biased towards complexity, and that can come with a cost. The more complex your investment structure is, the more different types of investments you have, the more complex your legal structure is, the more bookkeeping work you will have. And so therefore, if you're listening to this and you're saying, gosh, I have like 3 different kinds of investments, well, that means you need bookkeeping software to help keep things straight, and understand the different needs of those different types of investments.
Awesome. What's the best place for people to go to start their journey on this, to get the ball rocking and rolling for them, Adam?
Great. Well, if you are starting your rental property journey in general, you should be going to turbotenant.com. TurboTenant is REI Hub's biggest partner. The REI Hub and TurboTenant are the same thing. REI Hub is the accounting arm of TurboTenant, but TurboTenant is where you're generally going to start, because that's where you're going to be able to manage, to market your properties. That's where you're going to be able to find applicants, screen tenants, collect rent, handle maintenance, do all the things that are pushing you out into the real world, where you are corresponding and you are making it happen. And from there, you're going to go through TurboTenant into REI Hub, which is the back office, which is the accounting and the bookkeeping side of things. That's going to help keep all that information organized and comprehensible by you and your accountant, and getting ready for tax time. Now, of course, maybe you're not a rental property investor, or maybe you already have a management system in place, in which case you can come directly to reihub.net, where you can also come to us, not going through TurboTenant if you don't need that property management side of things. And just have a robust accounting system, double entry accounting system set up for the needs of a real estate investor, and be able to rock and roll from there.
Well, but I love the fact that with the TurboTenant, as you're putting those things in, it's automatically, you don't have to enter it in a second time on a
Absolutely.
separate piece of software, different kind of logins and stuff. Well, I mean, there's probably a little bit of login to it, but having that stuff already there for you, which is hopefully a big
Yep.
chunk of what you're having
If
to
you start from your
document.
TurboTenant account,
Yep.
if you start from TurboTenant and you add REI Hub on a TurboTenant, you're going to have all of the properties you have in TurboTenant automatically created in your REI Hub account. You're going to have your entire rent payment history collected through TurboTenant automatically in your REI Hub account, and that's going to turbo launch your ability into getting up and running even faster.
Awesome. Awesome. I love it. I love it. I love it. Big challenges for this upcoming year. Any changes to tax law that's kind of surprised you, or people should maybe keep a little bit of an eye out to talk with their CPA about?
Couple of things come to mind. Minor adjustments. Every year the IRS mileage rate adjusts.
Yep.
If you use REI Hub, that's going to happen for you automatically. You don't have to worry about it. But for all you doing it yourself, you should know. And there are some ongoing kind of steps from the last big tax laws passed back in 2017, where we are having things like bonus depreciation and stuff like that is kind of in a step down process, where there was a period of 100% bonus depreciation, then 80%, then 60%, 40%. But I definitely recommend you talk to your tax preparer and your financial professional about that. Second disclosure. Those are the biggest ones that come to mind in terms of things that are changing. So in general, the day-to-day bookkeeping stays pretty consistent, in terms of how you are building your books, in terms of getting to that profit and loss, that Schedule E. That's going to be relatively consistent from year to year. What happens at the CPA level, at the tax return level, has a little bit more variability to it. But those are the first things that come to mind in terms of what's changing, because there hasn't been any like big massive legislation on that recently. But the IRS is always updating guidance. And there are always some things that are a little less clear from past years, where they're trying to clarify. So definitely a good conversation to have.
Mhm. Now, what's the cost for using REI Hub for folks getting rock and rolling?
It varies based on the size of your portfolio. So the more properties you have, the more it costs. But generally, it ranges from about $9 a month up to about $80 a month, just depending on. Price is lower if you subscribe annually. We're going to compare very favorably to your generic accounting softwares out there, and you're going to find that you're going to be surprised at how much you get for that.
Amen. The big bang for the buck for what you're paying for, definitely. And having
Yes, sir.
having the ability to call and talk to somebody to ask them, hey, where do I put this? What does this category fall into is one of the most important things people have. They want to reach out and touch somebody or talk to somebody at least, versus it just, I got to wait on a hold or wait for a call back or all that other good stuff.
I mean, hey, it's tax season coming up. We're going to be busy. We might have to call you back, but
Right.
we're based in the US. We have experience with real estate bookkeeping, and we're willing to talk to you about your books.
That's awesome. Good stuff there. Well, check it out, guys. We'll put the links for you guys to get signed up, to check it out, to get your rock and rolling. If your finances or getting your books in order is one of your big resolutions for 2025, which I know most of you are, or how to streamline the operations where you're not the guy doing it at 2 o'clock in the morning trying to figure out everything, which I know most folks are or aren't doing it at all. So go out, check it out, REI Hub. Adam, thank you so much for coming on the Note Closure Show here and sharing your knowledge and passion. And we look forward to helping a lot of our investors and clients out get their books in order this year, huh?
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your enthusiasm for what can be a little bit of a dry topic, for bringing the good word to your audience. It's been a pleasure being here on the No Closer Show. Thank you so much, and stay warm and dry out there.
Sounds good, Adam. All right, guys, go out, take some action, check it out. Like I said, we'll put the links in the show notes and description for you. Take the opportunity. It's always good to review your systems, review what you're paying, your vendors and stuff like that. This is an opportunity for you to save, but increase the skill and the clarity of your numbers. Why would you do it? So go out, take some action, and we'll see you at the top.